Amen. Yeah. Hey, so excited sitting down with Doug Phillips. Doug Phillips is going to help us speak into what we've been speaking about, which is mental health. Doug's a clinician, counselor, therapist, and a good friend. He's been a mentor of mine for years, somebody that I can always go to in a pinch. He's got a ton of wisdom. He's just a good man. And we've already been catching up for a few minutes. So I'm like, oh, I'm already feeling happy. It's good to see you, man. What's happening?
I'm enjoying life there. It's just in the here and now. I've been helping my kids up in Oregon doing some logging and road building. And I got in a quad accident and mashed my leg up. So I'm limping around with pain in my leg. Thank God it's not pain in my head. Okay. But that's been something that's happening.
Yeah.
So that's for the moment, quad wreck.
Doug's always in the midst of some grand adventure. If he's like spearfishing, if he's like chasing seals out of the Sea of Cortez. So he's building roads and logging in Oregon. I love it. I want to learn more about how to do that.
Well, that's a lot of fun, I got to tell you.
Well, let's talk about.
It's a workout. It keeps me young.
That's exactly it, man. Like you're always active, and this is healthy. I just turned 50, and I'm like, let's just stay active. I don't want to get sedentary. I want to move.
Smart. You're good at that, Lance.
Thank you. So, what do you think about mental health? What is it? I mean, is there a definition?
Well, there's quite a few definitions of mental health.
Yeah.
If you Google that, you'll probably see it. I could just, read off a couple definitions if you want, but I'll glance. I took a couple notes because I knew you were going to ask me that. I think there's just a few components that are worth looking at. One, the obvious one is our emotions.
Yeah.
What we feel, what we do with what we feel, and when there are things that are challenging or difficult, how we process emotions that are challenging us.
Okay.
Anger, fear, sadness, grief. So that's a big one.
I love it.
And then there's a component of mental health that we call psychological, and that's kind of a thing of like, how are we thinking and perceiving about things?
Yeah.
And I like to use I like this about human beings. We love story. You ever notice like you get hooked on some crazy online story that and 5 minutes later they're selling you some pills. Have you ever seen that? It's like you can't stop hearing the story.
Yeah.
And I think God designed us with story in mind. And, we make our own stories, and we learn to make our stories, whether it's, from fiction or from movies. It's often from our family and parents. But the way we tell the story about what's happened or what's going to happen radically affects outcomes.
Wow.
Our energy, how we focus on it. Like I could tell you a story about my falling off that quad.
Yeah.
And getting run over by the quad, and I went blind. I mean, I literally went blind for 5 minutes. And that time I could tell you how scary it was and all that stuff.
Crazy.
Or I could tell you how much I experienced God's presence and peace in the process.
Okay.
I could tell you how I almost died. I could tell you about angelic interventions. I mean, I could tell the story the way I want to, and it has an impact on me and other people. So I just wanted to throw that in there, that on the psychological realm, like how we interpret it. You're going to ask me about.
Well, wait, time out. So do you think with that, like the stories, the memories that we're sharing, or the stories we tell, morph as we're in seasons of greater health? Like, do you think we would choose to talk about things differently when we're in a more stable place than when we're in like a more, whatever the word is, rough place, tight place, hard place?
Well,
because I hear you say what you like, the memories you bring up have impact on your mental health.
Oh yeah.
Whoa.
And even in the moment.
Yeah.
So I can tell you, man, I can say I can't stand COVID. It's driving me crazy.
Okay.
And you know what? You will jump out of your skin and you might go crazy. If instead the story is, wow, this is such a challenge. I know this is really developing my character and my intentionality around staying connected to people and fostering hope.
Wow.
Well, that's a different story. That's a whole different story. And you got people saying one, you probably have more people saying the former than the latter. But I got to tell you, Lance, it's probably better to say it the latter way. And so part of mental health is psychological, and it's how we interpret what we just experienced.
Yeah.
And then we actually train, and this of course relates to our spirituality very much.
Yeah.
So we want to get that right.
I love it.
And then the other aspect that I just want to mention is just the social aspect of mental health. It's like there's no way you're going to be mentally healthy if you're isolating and by yourself.
Okay.
I mean, people do not live well with that. I'm curious, your audience, is it largely faith-based, or is it kind of a mixed audience?
Yeah, Justice Collective is primarily a faith-based audience. Okay. But hopefully there's some people finding us that don't think us. We're happy if they're here.
No, yeah. So I would say the essence of the social aspect of mental health is the people that we hang out with that demonstrate they care for us. Yeah. That celebrate our values. Yes. That care about how we're doing. That ask us how we're doing. That demonstrate compassion when it's needed, or maybe a prod or two, when it looks like we're totally slacking on our own goals. Yeah. I mean, that's, in an ideal world, that's what church kind of needs to be included in our sense of what church is for. Yeah. And that's not the part where we're worshiping God. This is the part where we're hanging out together. Yeah. But in the middle of that hangout is the opportunity for great mental health to be fostered. Yeah. And, in my work as a clinician, people that don't have that going for them don't get over whatever it is they need to get over. Yeah. If they're depressed, if it's an addiction, if it's a what have you, if they don't have that social component with those kind of qualities involved, they're going to have a really hard time making it. Wow. So it's just kind of it's an essential element of mental health is quality social relationships. I could cite study after study about longevity or quality of life. It's amazing. I mean, we think it's like, it's all about our diet, and it's a lot about our diet, or it's all about this. But some of the statisticians really crunch it down to, if you've got a couple people that love you, you're going to live a really long time. Wow. Well, and if you don't, you're out of luck. So can't really underscore that. And so that's greater risk. That's enough.
But at greater risk, if you're alone, things compound versus get better. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. You're far less likely to stay on track with how you're experiencing life, or how the story you're telling yourself about life if you're by yourself.
Yeah. That's profound. This is good stuff. Back to the first point where you said something pretty technical, like mental health is the way people are feeling and the way they deal with those feelings. That's I heard another gal we interviewed talk about integrity between the two, that it's your feelings and your values are aligned, and when they're out of alignment, there's this, we're not in health, we're in an imbalance or an unhealth or a dis-ease. What do
we got problems?
How do people get that integrity between their feelings and their perceptions, and what is that process as a counselor, a therapist? How do you help people? Again, I heard you say community helps people. That's really good to know.
I'll tell you where this question leads me. Okay. Yeah. And that is, and I'm not sure if I'm quite hitting the target. You let me know. Okay. But I just want to say this anyway.
Please. Yeah.
When our public behaviors and experiences reflect our inner values and our personal view of ourselves, wow, we're likely to thrive and be in good shape. Okay. When our outer behaviors and people's perception of us doesn't line up with our inner core values or our inner sense of who we really are, we're very prone, I use the word self-loathing. We're likely to hate ourselves. Okay. Wow. And this gets us to a big issue. I do a lot of work with all kinds of different addictions, Lance. Okay. This gets to the issue of what we call shame, which has kind of been a popular subject in my profession for a decade or more.
Okay.
But, honestly, and since this is a faith-oriented audience, I would say that a lot of us have been trained to shame a lot. And so we've been shamed to behave better and be good or else. And then you can go, well, what is the or else? It's like, well, you're going to be kicked up. You're going to be kicked, under the bus, off the train. You're not going to get a promotion. People aren't going to like you as much. You're not going to get invited to this and that. And you're not going to gain status in your community.
Wow.
If you tell the truth about what's going on with you. So I don't even think this is what you asked me, but I just had to say this.
No way.
So
you like completely hit the target. You're like, I'm trying to hear, because and you're an expert in your field, like you're doing this stuff.
Yes.
You would say, hey, I'm an expert. So, but you're hitting the target.
Close enough.
Because you're
good. So
and you're saying stuff.
Humility mixed with courage, to where you can tell the truth about what you're struggling with to the right people that aren't going to harm you. That leads to great mental health. And I don't care if you're struggling with some addiction that you can't manage, some behavior, and that's addiction's a funny word. I remember I used to teach and train people that ran residential programs for adolescents, and they were all, well, many of them were rather judgmental towards these people that had addictions. Okay. And often it was a substance addiction, or it might be a legal issue around sexuality kind of addiction. But I would teach about addictions, and then my references, my examples would all be about coffee and donuts and shopping when you don't feel well. And I did that on purpose, because I wanted to break up these people's judgments towards the people they're trying to help, and move them and to generate more compassion. And at the same time, get real with themselves that there's behaviors that's going on in their life that need some work. And if they're so busy, like building chatter in their mind about what's wrong with other people, and they're not really asking the Lord, hey, is there any logs in my eye that I need to work on, or am I just fine? And I can just go on judging all these other people that are, these sinners. So I found that quite useful. And I have to tell you, socially, people that can't be honest about what their challenges are, or where, where are you not batting 100, 1,000? I'll use a baseball metaphor. Where do you strike out sometimes? Now I go, pizza. Or I get really ticked off at my kids, when they do this or they do that, and I get out of hand. Somebody who can't go there, I as a therapist, you just do what you got to do with people. But as friends, I like friends that have the capacity to tell the truth about where they're growing, where they're struggling. And it's kind of like a poker game. Like, if you tell me some stuff about you, I'll tell you some stuff about me, and we're going to exchange some trust here. And then in the matter of that, there's intimacy that's growing, and our capacity to help and influence each other has just exponentially grown.
Wow. I love it.
Lance, I could tell you a story. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to do it online, but just a story comes to mind where that can get out of hand. You can be too explosive in your self-disclosure. So I'll say that. So all that to say, you need to be thoughtful about who it is. I mean, this is just like an experiment. I'm going to trust you with a little bit. It's kind of like a card game. I'm going to ante up, 5 chips. What are you going to do? And then it exchanges back and forth. And then in the middle of that, there's the opportunity for real social, healing that is social. My favorite scripture of mine is James 5:16. And that is when we pray for one another, when we confess our trespasses and our sins with one another and pray for each other, we'll be healed.
Wow.
So a lot of times people think that is, no, did I lose you?
No, we're good. I can see you.
I just lost you for a second. Okay. I think that's a real big one. It's like when we're in a social context where we can learn that we can trust each other with our weaknesses and then pray for each other. That's when the blood gets, I'm talking Christianese for a second. That's when the blood gets on that problem and is transformative.
Nice.
But I have to tell your audience, I just would really urge you to, the things that you struggle with that remain hidden, the blood's not going to get on it very well.
Wow.
You can say you're sorry 1,000 times, but until you talk to a couple people about what's going on with you, when you risk, they're judging you,
Yeah.
in that context of your vulnerability and asking for help specifically, the blood of Jesus can get on that thing and transform that problem.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And it sounds like to me, like a therapist, or your role in people's lives is like you're kind of catalyzing and helpful for people to start getting vulnerable. And maybe it should, as that grows, it turns more into they're able to do it with their community as well. But maybe there's a dynamic where people maybe don't even know how. How do I open up? How do I have this courage?
Well, you're right. And I don't think it's modeled in very many social circles, that kind of vulnerability.
Okay.
You could probably think of instances or some preachers that will practice some vulnerability, and it's usually quite well received by most people because it builds trust.
Yeah.
And it builds safety, and it builds the probability that guy's not going to judge me for my weaknesses because he just talked about his weaknesses.
Yeah.
So it actually is an enormous trust builder and intimacy builder when we disclose things.
Okay. And
Okay.
culturally, we've been conditioned to, like you were saying earlier, the shame, the judgment that we, like you were mentioning, some of those workers carrying towards the people that are there to serve. We're in such a kind of a performance oriented culture. Maybe the vulnerability isn't a natural go-to, huh? It's more like I need to show my strength, or I need to be good, or I need to.
Oh, you're right on with that. I mean, you're absolutely right on. And, whether it's the military, medicine, the clergy, I mean, to show weaknesses, to cry, to expose vulnerabilities is a great way to not get a promotion. It's a great way to lose reputation. I mean, is this not a way to win the game?
Yeah.
To do it. So it's like, and those people in leadership become our role models. And so we go, well, what are we supposed to do? Well, don't tell anybody anything. Don't expose weakness, you'll just get hurt.
Yeah.
So, that dynamic is, it looks like it's getting better in society at large. I think it's getting better within the faith community as well.
Yeah.
But we've got a long way to go, because it has a lot to do with why we have so many nagging problems and lack of real vitality in our faith community. I mean, I would love to tell people that don't know Jesus that if you actually gave your life to Christ and joined the Christian community, that you could lose weight, stop shopping compulsively, learn to control your out of control emotions, figure out, have the wisdom, know how to have self-control around parenting your kids and whatever. I would love to tell them that they would have those kind of outcomes if they practiced our faith. But honestly, there's not a lot of statistical evidence that we're doing much better than anybody else.
Wow.
And it's not that the blood doesn't work. It's just that we don't know how to apply the social component that's so vital to our faith operating the way it should.
Okay. Which is
the
loving of each other, the community, we're connected. Yep.
Yeah. Well, you can relate to this, Lance. I think I recall something about your testimony, but for me, I was a backslidden Christian and a raging addict. That's me. At 18, 19 years, there was the Vietnam War era and all of the isms and all of the, just all of the movements that were going on at the time. I was really caught up in that, really caught up in sin. And I developed a substance addiction in the middle of that. And I can just tell the power of the blood. I mean, God really set me free. I mean, when I yielded my life to him.
Yeah.
But the rest of the story is that I made 5 meetings a week because I was in Bible studies or worship services or hanging out with Christians like almost every day.
Yeah.
And the people that I was hanging out with, the people I were eating with, they were demonstrating the core values. They were demonstrating the behaviors that were going to help me get well and stay well.
Mm.
So as much as I can just attribute it to a supernatural act of God, which I totally can, there's this other element where the body of Christ and the Jesus movement at the time, actually, that was kind of a salt house thing for the most part, under Bill's ministry and Earl's ministry in Bethel back in the 70s. But all those meetings and all those people and all that exchange with them was part of what helped me get free and stay free.
Yeah.
So I just got to say, that's part of the picture.
Beautiful. I love it. What a great emphasis to draw. It feels so natural.
Yeah, it can be so organic, and so much of what we were designed to be, as far as the expression of our faith and our relationship with each other, we kind of need to get back to some of those basics. We kind of need to get our heads, out of our tablets,
Yeah.
and back into asking our friends, hey, how you doing? How's your heart? We need to get back to that and out of the tablet and off the social media.
When people cross that line into vulnerability, what have you noticed in terms of things that like will shut that valve up or keep that valve open? Like,
well, I can remember it was just like, I think it was just yesterday or something. I kind of figured, somebody needed to talk about something that was going on. This was a social setting, right? It wasn't, but it's one-on-one.
yeah.
And so I just started dropping little self-disclosures. Like I just offered that one about drug addiction a second ago.
Yeah.
I offered a couple of those, and I demonstrated I'm willing to risk, you're judging me. I'm willing to be vulnerable with you. I'm a safe guy.
Yeah.
And so that person was able to respond with like, well, here's the thing I'm struggling with, which was like not easy for that person to do.
Yeah.
So, so I'd have to say,
That's good.
if what you're struggling with is being judgmental and critical, you need to get some help with that. I mean, for a couple of reasons. One, it's going to make you a negative person. It's a joy killer for you. Now, it's a kind of a creepy way to build some self-esteem, but what it really does is feeds pride, not a healthy kind of self-esteem. And it's absolutely toxic for your community.
Yeah.
So when you judge somebody, because of their behavior or how they look or their sexuality or whatever it is that you're demonstrating disdain and judgment for, it's toxic for the people around you to feel safe and to be able to ask for help. And in the middle of that, experience God's grace for transformation. So you're not doing anybody a favor when you allow yourself to be judgmental and critical. I mean, God, like it's a big old ugly sin. You ought to deal with it. Ask for help.
I love it. That's beautiful.
Is that close to what you're asking me? So foster acceptance, foster celebration of small growth. Like, oh, you only did that sin 10 times yesterday. That wasn't your baseline 15. My God, you're doing great. You only did it 10 times. Wow. Way to go, man. I mean, high five. We got, you got to look at increments of moving forward.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing a project right now, Lance. I'm in my mid 60s. A lot of my friends are developing with the fruit of chronic diseases that come with aging.
Yeah. So,
whether it's dementia or cardiovascular disease or diabetes or what have you. And they're struggling, and a lot of these are lifestyle related. In other words, exactly what you eat, whether you exercise or not, some herbs and supplements you could take. I mean, those are huge lifestyle component to a lot of this. And I'm working on, and this is kind of what I'm doing at this stage in my professional career. I'm kind of on sabbatical from doing one-on-one counseling with some exceptions, but I'm kind of on a sabbatical. But I'm working on developing a program that's holistic, wellness oriented, contains all these different components that when you stack together, increase the likelihood of having success. And I'm my own guinea pig as far as figuring out what works.
Yeah.
So I'm doing brain exercises that is borrowing from gaming, where I win badges and awards and stars, and little dopamine rewards, for me to do my hard work. I've got little apps about what I eat, and I laugh at myself because I can't wait to open that app and say, yeah, I ate some more legumes and I had 3 spices that I was supposed to eat today. Bing, bing, bing. It sounds funny, but I'm working on finding ways where we remove the stigma that goes with personal growth, that's a funny way to say it, personal growth rather than sin.
Yeah.
I remove the stigma. I'm not opposed to saying sin, okay, because like that's okay. But of removing the stigma, leveling the field. I don't care if your addiction is sex or candy bars or too much online shopping, at Amazon, whatever it is. Like, if it's out of control and if it needs to be curbed or not, and how much capacity you have to change. If it's a weakness. So I'm looking at leveling the playing field, creating enough opportunities for the most people to identify with a group that is all moving forward towards wellness and wholeness. And it kind of doesn't matter what their issue is, because everybody there is working on something. That's what holds them together. We're all working on our own individualized treatment plan, celebrating the fact that we're working on it, encouraging one another when we have to, and getting on the phone and dragging somebody out of what we need to drag them out of if they're really blowing it. So that's what I'm up to right now. I think it might be a while before that manifests, but that's my great goal.
That's beautiful. Sounds amazing. I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of the male female dynamic. Like, what do you see in your work over the years in terms of, do you think women are more apt to be vulnerable than men? Do you think men are less likely to engage with healing, like whether that's pursuing a counselor or a therapist or just going deeper?
Oh, that's absolutely true. I mean, that's absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, the guys are way more infected with that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to have to move a little bit, Lance, so that I can stay on task here. My battery, I need to charge. Let me just shift a bit.
Yeah,
I think I can do this. I think I can do this seamlessly. We'll see. There you are. Okay, good.
You got it.
Change where I'm sitting. Yeah, you're right. I mean, guys definitely struggle with that more. I think we're trained to it. I don't know if it's biological. It might be, but I mean, we would have to stay out in the cold and bring that mammoth home if we can. But of course, the flip side is women have to bear children, which sounds pretty tough to me. So everything I've heard is kind of hard. But all that to say, I do think that women have the upper hand at developing their social connections with some intimacy and trust, and guys are more likely to be strong and silent and keep quiet to themselves. And so I think women have a greater opportunity for healing and wholeness than most men do. Okay. And I've seen some really promising signs about the current younger generations of reversing that direction. I'm really pleased to see, and I think it's going to get better. But we should stay that course. I mean, the word emo. Are you familiar with emo?
Oh no, teach us.
It's kind of a derogatory term for someone who's always explaining their emotions, or they live from their emotions, primarily not cognitively, not from logic. Okay. I mean, there's such a thing as too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
About being feelings oriented and share. I mean, there's such a thing as going overboard. Yeah. But that's not very many people's problem. Okay. Most people's problem is hiding and isolation and being afraid to share what's really going on with them, and afraid to take risks. Yeah. And one thing we know in our faith culture is that the supernatural, the miracles, risk is a needed component. Yeah. I mean, it isn't going to happen without some risk. And I have to say, getting well is kind of similar, where it's very hard to get well without taking some risks. And that's the social risk of reaching out to other people, asking for help, asking for prayer, support, accountability, whatever you want to call it. I think that kind of risk is essential, that risk and courage.
Beautiful.
So come on, guys, try to step up, recognize, your granddad and your dad and your great granddad, they did a ton of things right, but not everything. Yeah. And we're going to make the world a better place by learning what the females already know how to do, and that is to open up and share, not mindless chatter, but things that matter. That's going to make a difference with good outcomes.
Beautiful.
Let's do it. Let's go, guys.
I love it. One area that you've been active in, you mentioned it earlier, just working in the addiction space for years, but I want to focus on sexual addiction for a minute or two. Okay. I mean, it feels like that is more of a rampant, there's just something going on. I think with the advent of technology, how pornified,
Yeah.
how pornified our culture is. Friends of ours at Exodus Cry just released a pretty powerful film, Raised on Porn. Just the idea that kids, I mean, they just have access to these images at a very young age. And, it distorts their reality as healthy men eventually. I'm focusing on guys right now, but that's not to say women don't have the same struggle. What would you say, like what you've learned, discovered, helping people get free from sexual addiction? Is it a big problem, sexual addiction, in your opinion? I know we're only focusing on one thing right now, which is
That's okay.
pretty bad.
It would sure seem to be. It seems to be a growing problem. And a lot of like cigarettes, it's kind of a guy thing, but then the women got in on it. And now, gals are dying of lung cancer too.
Okay.
So the same thing's going on around porn.
Okay.
So it's not just a guy thing at all.
Okay.
That's been a growing experience, and kind of like people culturally aren't used to that, just like they culturally weren't used to women smoking cigarettes.
All right.
So yeah, it cuts both ways, and you're absolutely right. The advent of the internet and proximity of getting porn is so easy, just a couple strokes away. I mean, just a couple taps on your smartphone and you're there.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a big one. I don't think it's, again, and especially in a faith community, it's one of the more taboo types of problems. You're better off eating cookies. You're not going to get knocked down for that nearly as fast as you are for looking at dirty pictures or masturbating. So I think what's, ultimately, this just goes with the territory of everything I just said about what's going to help us get well applies to pornography. Yeah. You got to know, I guess the message that I want to give is that it's not any harder to cure pornography than it is to cure a shopping addiction, because they hit the same reward centers in the brain. The antecedents, the things that precede, the behavior are just about the same.
Okay.
The way it creates the circuitry, the neuronal, the way it creates channels in your mind about how you just automatically do it to feel better, it's the same. I don't care if it's cookies, or Pornhub. So all that to say, the way to get well is kind of sort of the same.
Yep.
And again, it's a holistic approach. I mean, a couple shots at the counselor is not going to fix it. Yeah. And faking it, hiding it, okey doking it, going through the motions to get back in the house, if your wife kicks you out, is not going to really handle this thing. And reality is, your life is going to be so much better if you get rid of that addiction. Trust me, guys. It is absolutely achievable. You do not have to stay stuck with porn. Now, you might have to be brave and take some steps you haven't taken yet to get free. You might have to take some risks, like I've been speaking of, but you can be porn free. Nice. I guarantee it. You can beat that thing.
It's beautiful. Good thoughts. And you guys had a resource. I don't know if that's still up and available for people.
Oh, yes. You're talking about Freedom U Wellness?
Yeah.
That's still available. It's people that want to access, use that material and use our counselors are free to do that. It's all right there available. They can go for it. Just Google it and there it'll be. Freedom U Wellness.
freedomu.org.com.
Right. Okay. .org. Sexual wellness.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love it. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Anything that you want to leave us with that I haven't steered you towards? Anything else on your mind? So valuable. I love you. I love your thoughts. I love the way you think. You just have so much wisdom to offer, and I'm always encouraged listening to you, Doug.
That makes me feel so good, Lance. Lance, you're being such a good interviewer. I know last night I was watching Johnny Carson interview Drew Barrymore when she was 7 years old.
Wow.
And she was amazing, but Johnny was amazing. Wow. About, how he responded, how he led the questions and whatnot. And I said, you're doing at least as good as Johnny.
Oh man, there you go.
You're doing a great job. I don't know if there's more to add than what you've given me the opportunity to share with people. I would just have to say this, this is a good time for us to foster hope.
Good.
Because this is not a hope-filled social environment. And to the degree that you're plugged into media, it is very despairing, very scary. So you might want to adjust. If this was like a nutrient, you're probably way overdone, around that nutrient of the media.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's mainstream media, if it's alternative media. What I would really suggest you move towards kiddies and worship music, maybe grow a garden, but beyond that, foster hope. I mean, scriptures, the Bible, your favorite authors. Fill your mind with something that's going to move you forward. Because like the need for emotional resilience is higher now, maybe in any time in my experience, in my personal experience. The need to foster emotional resilience and intentionality with, what goes in. There's an old acronym, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. And you got to really watch what's coming into your ear gate, your eye gate. You have to be very thoughtful about that and start feeding yourself some quality things.
It's good.
I don't mean just food.
Yep.
I just mean what you allow yourself to experience, hear, see, and even think about.
Yeah. What a beautiful last word. Perfect. And I think those that are taking time with this moment, like they're getting some good stuff from you, good wisdom, really, really apropos and empowering. Like this feels very empowering. And I love how simple you're making mental health sound. And it's not like an out of reach science thing. It's just like, do the simple things well, and you'll be thriving. Love it. Doug, appreciate
Right
you.
on. Thank you, Lance. It's been a joy to share with you today. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. Thanks for being willing to spend some time with us. So I'm going to officially sign this one off. So again, Doug Phillips, is there anything, if people want to find you, it sounds like you're on sabbatical from counselor mode. Freedom you already mentioned. So that's a resource that these guys offer. And that's specific to just kind of addictions in general, or just specifically to the sexual addiction side of the equation?
It's designed for sexual addiction in particular, but all the principles work for every addiction.
Okay. So look
And
that
it's also
resource up. Freedom U is online. Just Google it. Is there anything else you'd like to say in terms of if people want to connect with you or get to, yeah, it's all good. You don't have to provide any details. So no pressure.
No.
Okay.
Again, I'm on sabbatical, so I don't really, unless what I am looking for are colleagues on this search for a wellness-oriented, holistic way of beating, I'm going to call it bad habits.
Yeah.
And lifestyle issues that are bringing harm and death to you. Now, that doesn't mean you want help, but that means you've got help. You've got structure, you've got ideas, you've got plans, you have a residential or online communities that are doing that. I would love to hear from you, because that's what I'm doing my research on right now in my personal practice.
Cool. So colleagues in that space.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks for throwing that out. And
thanks so much. Thanks.
You're welcome, Doug. Thank you. I'm going to officially wrap this up. You guys, thanks for joining us. Spread the word. Let people know about the conversations we're having. Hopefully these are empowering moments for you guys in your journey. And God bless you. We will see you soon.